Apologies if you can hear some wind or something in the background. The UK is currently being shafted by a storm. Anyway, the 1990s were an absolute godsend for small convertible sports cars. Of course, you had the legendary Mazda MX-5 as well as the MG-F, Alfa Romeo Spider and BMW Z3. However, there is one 90s sports car which is forgotten by a lot of people. The Lotus Elan M100. But why isn't the Elan remembered as fondly as the MX-5 or the Z3? Well, it's probably due to the fact that it's front-wheel drive. But is it still deserving of the love its contemporaries receive? Well, let's take a look. We begin in the 1980s, where Lotus, like most British car makers at this point, was struggling with finances. In 1981, car designer Oliver Winterbottom, yes that's his name, was brought back to Lotus after working with TVR to help design a new car to sit alongside the Esprit and the Excel. This new car would use the Elan name, which hadn't been used since 1975. At this point, Lotus had a partnership with Toyota, who also had a controlling stake in the company, and so the new Elan, known as the M90, would use many Toyota components and would be sold through Toyota dealerships as a Lotus Toyota. Unfortunately, the project was shelved after Lotus's owner and founder Colin Chapman passed away on the 16th of December 1982. This caused absolute chaos at Lotus, and they almost went bankrupt until David Wickens took over and became chairman in 1983. He restarted the M90 project, which he renamed to X100, and, after some slight adjustments, a prototype was commissioned in 1984. It was made of fiberglass with the 1.6-litre engine from the Toyota AE86 and a Toyota 5-speed manual transmission. It also had rear lights from an Aston Martin Lagonda and a radiator from the Austin Allegro. Unfortunately, the concept car didn't impress senior management. It had a poor chassis design and looked incredibly dated. It didn't seem very innovative. Meanwhile, Lotus engineers used their Toyota connections to test drive the new front-wheel drive Corolla, and they were rather impressed. And so, Lotus asked Peter Stevens to draw up a new design for a front-wheel drive sports car. In 1985, the design was brought before senior management, along with the design of the M90. They voted for Stevens' new design, and the M90 was dead. Rip my guy, send one up. In 1986, Lotus were bought by General Motors, giving them a large injection of money and, unfortunately, ending their partnership with Toyota. Their increased funds allowed them to extensively test the new car. They built 19 crash cars and 42 development vehicles. Elan M100s clocked almost 1 million miles testing in harsh climates such as the Arctic, the Arizona desert, and Norfolk. Yes, one was driven at full pelt around Snetterton for 24 hours straight. Around £35 million was invested in development, the most Lotus had ever spent on a car at this point. The Elan M100 was finally released in August 1989. It had a modified 1.6-litre 16-valve Isuzu 4-cylinder and a 5-speed manual gearbox. Two versions were available at launch, the 1.6-litre naturally aspirated version and the Turbo SE. The Turbo had 163 horsepower, a top speed of 137 miles an hour, a 0-60 time of 6.5 seconds, and a price tag of £19,850, while the naturally aspirated version had about 130 horsepower, a top speed of 122 miles per hour, a 0-60 time of 7.6 seconds, and cost £17,850. The press were initially sceptical with Lotus's decision to make their new sports car front-wheel drive. However, once they tested the new Elan, they were very surprised. Autocar said it was the quickest point-to-point car available, and many still regard the Elan M100 as one of the best handling front-wheel drive cars ever made. However, some people did think that the new Elan was too predictable and too secure. Well, I guess you can't please everyone. Despite the Elan being brilliant, sales weren't what Lotus had hoped. As we've learnt from another British sports car that was released around this time, something rather important happened in 1989, the Mazda MX-5. Despite the Turbo Elan being faster and more powerful, the Mazda was cheaper and more traditional. Sales were especially disappointing in the crucial US market, where, due to high production costs, the Elan cost about as much as a Corvette. Production of the Elan M100 ended in 1992, after Isuzu discontinued production of their 1.6-litre engine. Just 3,855 Elans were produced, only 559 of which being sold in the US. The vast majority of Elans were turbocharged, just 129 naturally aspirated cars were made. On the 27th of August 1993, General Motors sold Lotus to ACBN Holdings, who also owned Bugatti. Soon after this, it was discovered that Lotus had 800 extra Isuzu engines being stored, and so, after some slight revisions to address some criticisms of the earlier model, the new S2 Elan was released in June 1994. Only the turbocharged version was available, however it had 10 less horsepower than the S1 due to the catalytic converter, but its handling was improved due to revised suspension, tyres and steering components. Other revisions include a factory alarm/immobilizer, some redesigned trim, a new steering wheel and, most importantly, a lengthened and angled handbrake. 800 Elan S2s were produced, all of which for the UK market. Production of the Lotus Elan M100 finally ended in September 1995, but the Elan M100 wasn't exactly dead yet. In 1996, Lotus sold the production rights and tooling to Kia, of all companies, who wanted to use the Elan as their halo model. The new Kia Elan wasn't simply just a rebadged Lotus. Korean law dictated that in order to protect Korean jobs, the M100 would have to use Korean parts. And so, the new car would use a naturally aspirated 1.8-litre Kia 4-cylinder, producing about 150 horsepower. This allowed it to go from 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds with a top speed of 137 miles an hour. Kia predicted production figures of around 2,000 to 6,000 cars a year, with the potential of a turbocharged module somewhere down the line. Autocar tested one of these early models and said that the steering wheel was too big, the interior quality was dodgy, the instrumentation was muddled, and the raised ride height led to a more comfortable ride but crappy handling. The Kia Elan was only available in Korea and Japan, where it was known as the Vigato. Despite the rather ambitious production figures, only around 1,056 cars were produced, with some sources saying as little as 792 being produced. Production ended in 1999 and the Elan M100 was finally retired. Just a year after the Lotus M100 left production, the Elise arrived and took the sports car world by storm, leaving the Elan to be forgotten by most people. Nowadays, many people still look down on the Elan due to its drivetrain and the fact that it's a Lotus. They think it will be horrifically unreliable and expensive to maintain. And it's a shame, because they're missing out on a truly excellent sports car. Things aren't all bad, however, as due to the slightly negative stigma around the M100, prices aren't as high as one may think. Compare the price of a good condition Elise S1 and a good condition Elan, and you'd be quite surprised. Yes, the Elise is more desirable, but the Elan is not a bad car. So, if you're looking for a future classic which handles amazingly, sounds fantastic and is lots of fun to drive, maybe the Lotus Elan M100 is the car for you. Anyway, that is it from me today. If you did enjoy, please do go down below, leave a like, maybe even subscribe. Thank you for your support on the channel from last year. We went from 80 subscribers to like 1,200. It's kind of mad, not gonna lie, but also pretty cool. If there's any topics or cars you want me to cover, please do leave them down in the comments below. Also follow my Twitter @AutoAdmiration. But anyway, I do hope to see you next time. Goodbye.